Welcome back to Clash of Cultures channel, y'all. As we continue on with our college football preview series, today we're going to preview Alabama. Before we get into the football talk, as always, if you're new to the channel, please do us a huge favor and leave a like down below. Also, hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell so you do not miss a single upload or your favorite team being discussed here on the channel. Also, if you're a returning viewer, we appreciate the love and support as we continue to grow this community. So just to kind of get us started, Dad, what do you feel about Alabama as far as last year heading into this year, and kind of what is your take on them initially?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a down year for Alabama. I know a lot of Alabama fans are going to disagree with this point, but I think Bryce Young really bailed them out of a lot of games. If you go back and you look at their schedule, if you look at how they looked last year, and you take, obviously, we know about the Tennessee game, the LSU game that they dropped, but we can also talk about that Texas A&M game. We can also talk about the Ole Miss game. They did not look great at different points in the season, and Bryce Young in some of those games just was able to bail them out. Obviously, Bryce Young is not there anymore. We know Will Anderson is not there anymore. Those were the stars of both their offense and their defense. Now, Alabama does a great job recruiting under Nick Saban. You know they're going to bring in the next five-star, but it's not that simple. I don't think college football is just plug and play. I put the next guy in, and he's going to be as good as Will Anderson or Bryce Young. So I suspect you're going to see a down year. And don't forget, Jahmyr Gibbs, that they also lost, who was the other star of the offense. So, again, I know they're going to plug people in. I know they have the next five-star up, but I think it's going to take a while for some of those players to really be good. I think Alabama, and to Alabama's credit, I think when some of these players get experience, they are going to be really good next year and probably a couple years after that. But I think this coming year, 2023 season, I don't expect them to do well. That's just me being honest. What's your thoughts?
As a Clemson fan, obviously Clemson has played Alabama numerous times in the playoffs. I have a lot of respect for Alabama. I'm going to go a different way than you went, though. I think last season they finished 11-2, I believe. They had two razor-thin losses, one of them coming to Tennessee by 3, the other one coming against LSU, I believe in overtime or like a last-second kind of thing. They very well could have been undefeated. I think
because the LSU game was overtime. You remember LSU went for 2 to win the game. Yeah,
dude ran in, right? The quarterback ran in?
Yes.
Yeah, so, I think, like I said, they could have easily won both of those games. Obviously, they didn't. That's the way football is, the way the cookie crumbled. But I think I can never count out Nick Saban and how good of a coach he is. To me, he's arguably the best coach in college football history. He's up there with the guys that like Bear Bryant and the dude from Ohio State. What's bro's name? I forget.
Woody Hayes.
And even Tressel. Tressel is pretty good too.
Tressel's good. Urban,
Yeah, so there's a few guys, but I would say to me, he's my kind of coach goat for college football. Yeah, I think just the last decade, what he's been able to do. Obviously, like you said, it's gonna be kind of hard to plug and play, but I think if there's any team that can do it, if there's any coach that can do it, it's Nick Saban. I think no matter who is playing for him, he's going to be competing for a national championship. And I think the biggest storyline going into the season is the quarterback room. Obviously, you have Ty Simpson, Ty Simpson, Milroe, and then you got Buckner out of Notre Dame. Obviously, they brought over Tommy Rees for Notre Dame. And so I was watching another podcast and another YouTuber. A lot of guys, if you guys are familiar with college football, is Joe Klatt. So I was watching his channel, and he was talking about the Alabama situation, basically saying Tommy Rees wouldn't have told Buckner to come over if he didn't think he was going to play.
I agree.
Yeah, why would Buckner come over to ride the bench and ride the pines? Doesn't make sense. Now, as a college football fan, I feel like Alabama not being in the running is kind of weird. So I'm hoping that they're in the running just because I know how good of a coach Nick Saban is. And I know that if my team was in the playoffs and we beat Alabama, then I know that we earned it. So that's why, like, for example, I think Alabama should have been in the playoffs over TCU. Now, I get it. TCU was undefeated, and they kind of did their thing, and then I think they lost late, but they still made it in.
They lost in the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, but I think that Alabama would have put up a better fight than TCU did, and that's just my bias towards them, I guess I would say. And like I said, I'm not an Alabama fan, so before the comments start coming at me saying I'm not an Alabama fan. I am a Clemson fan. I do not rep Alabama, but I just know that Nick Saban is a great coach. The recruiting that they've done, and I know that when it comes to the big game, we said this a few months back when we were talking about college football, they just show up to play. It's another game for them. And I think with them being in the playoffs 6 of the 8 years or however many years, they're going to go in. There's not going to be any sort of nerves, no jitters, no butterflies. They're just going to ball. So, like I said, as a college football fan, I would like to see Alabama start Milroe. I know he played for a little bit when Bryce Young was out last year. I just personally think, as a fan, it gives Alabama more of, as a college football fan, let me clarify that. It gives Alabama more versatility offensively, him being athletic. They just have to cater the offense around him. We've saw Alabama before do smash mouth football with the guys like Mark Ingram,
Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, Trent Richardson, guys like that. Even like Damian Harris, that was like right when they started to change towards passing the ball. But I think if they did that, like a read option type game with power running game, they'll be fine. They don't need Milroe to sling the ball over the place. And clearly they're not comfortable with Milroe or Simpson, or they're never Buckner over. But as an outside perspective looking in, I definitely think Alabama can still reach that peak of winning a championship this year, even though there are question marks around the quarterback position. Obviously, they have to play LSU, A&M, Auburn. Those are all going to be swing games. They're going to eventually play Tennessee or Georgia in the SEC championship game. I would still favor Georgia and Tennessee over them, probably, if they end up playing them. But like I said, I can't count Nick Saban out just because how good of a coach he is, and I will never count him out. Just like I said, what he's been able to do the last 10 seasons, you could put anybody out there and they have a chance to win just based off of the scheme and what he runs.
Yeah, I agree. You have to give Nick Saban his credit, his props. And I know you mentioned some other college football coaches, but I have to put Nick Saban as the top college football coach of all time. But my concern is just like I said in the Georgia video, at some point in time, that attrition is going to affect you, right? And like I said, I think Bryce Young was so important to what this team did offensively, and Gibbs was so important to what this team did offensively. Now you are bringing back Jace McClain, who looks like he's going to be a good running back. He went for almost 700 yards last year, but this is a guy who's a senior who hasn't really had the opportunity to shine. And to your point, I think Buckner is going to be the starting quarterback. I think that is the reason he transferred to Alabama. Just like you said, I think that Alabama is not comfortable with Milroe or Simpson. I think they didn't see what they wanted to see. I think Nick Saban didn't see what he wanted to see from his starting quarterback, and Buckner is going to be the starting quarterback. If you remember, Buckner was starting at Notre Dame at the beginning of the season before he got hurt. He is actually a really good quarterback, a dual threat guy. So I suspect that he is going to be the starting quarterback. The real question is, can some of these other guys step up? Now, Alabama's bringing back a bunch of receivers that they had last year. Ja'Cory Brooks, Jermaine Burton from Georgia, transferred from Georgia a year ago. So they're bringing back some talent, but none of those guys really balled out last year. Again, when we talk about Ja'Cory Brooks, he only had under 700 yards. Burton had under 700 yards receiving. So you're not talking about a level of the Alabama type player. And again, especially when we talk about the receiving core, we can talk about Smith. We can talk about Amari Cooper. We can talk about Jalen Waddle. I don't think you're bringing back that level of star really in anybody on the offensive side. Now, I think Alabama, just like you said, is going to really rely on a very good offensive line that they're going to bring back and playing smash mouth football, beating you in the trenches, because I don't think the passing game, the quarterback, and the receivers really lend themselves to them being great, spreading you out and distributing the ball in that way. But we'll see.
No, yeah, I mean, they lost a lot on defense as well. Now, yes, the thing about Alabama is they're always reloading. They're never going to rebuild. They lost Jordan Battle, obviously the safety, to the NFL. They lost Eli Ricks to the NFL. They lost Brian Branch to the NFL. Kyrie Jackson transferred to Oregon, the corner. So, I mean, I think and I know they're going to have a true freshman.
They lost Tao. They lost.
Oh, yeah, Henry, yeah. So, I mean, I know they have a true freshman who's penciled in right now as a starter. His name is Caleb Downs. He's supposed to play
safety.
Yeah, he's supposed to play safety. So obviously they see something in him starting a true freshman at safety, which is kind of crazy. But they have a lot of talent. They have a lot of 5 stars and 4 stars. Like I said, and another thing that I would say about Alabama is they always lose coordinators and they're always competing. So yes, they lost Bill O'Brien to the NFL, and they're going to have a new guy, Kevin Steele, coming over for defense. But I think when you look at Nick Saban and the culture that he's kind of implemented, like I said, I just can't count them out, even though they lost so much. And now I will say, to your point, the receiving room is definitely not what it once was, and it's kind of like Clemson. Like Clemson always had that go-to. Ja'Cory Brooks and Jermaine Burton are really good receivers. I know they got to transfer Malik Benson as well, but I don't know how good those guys are. Now, it could be a situation where, Jermaine Burton really shines and, he comes out of nowhere and has like a Jalen Hyatt type year. But we're not going to know. Again, this is all speculation and predictions. But as of right now, the names they have on paper, I know Alabama fans are going to come in here and say, we're loaded, we have this and that. At the end of the day, for the casual football fan who's not a fan of Alabama, you really don't know these guys until maybe week 6, week 7. Like for instance, no one knew Jalen Hyatt until this year. Right. I can say no one knew that. Now, if you in the comments saying that you knew him, then hats off to you. I would probably make you prove it because there's no way I think anybody knows outside of a Tennessee fan. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say you knew Jalen Hyatt before this year, and he was a top 2 receiver. I mean, I'm pretty sure he won the Blitnikoff, right?
He did win the Blitnikoff.
Yeah, so the Blitnikoff award winner was unknown before this year. So I think in this case, it's going to be one of those situations where a receiver is going to have to break out of nowhere. Now they need the quarterback to be able to throw the ball. So like I said before, I hope that Milroe's the starter. Just based off of, I think it'll be electric seeing his high school tape, seeing the little bit of spurts he got to play in the spring game, as well as last year when Bryce Young was hurt. I feel like they just have to let him loose. It's kind of like the situation with DJ at Clemson. Like they have training wheels on them. Just let him fling the ball around. And if it doesn't work out, then bench him. But you have to let him go. He's a quarterback. Let him do his thing. Don't kind of baby him and walk him through. Just let him do his thing. And I think you're going to see that with Tennessee with Joe Milton, I think his name is. Yeah, they're going to let him sling the ball. Even though he doesn't have that much experience, they're going to let him sling the ball.
But he can sling, but we'll talk about him.
They just need to let Milroe do his thing, use his athleticism, and I think they'll be fine. I still think they're one of the favorites in the country to make to the playoffs at least. Obviously, they're going to have to play Tennessee and Georgia. Let me pull up their schedule.
Let's talk about schedule. So why you do that? I mean, obviously, and you mentioned this on defense, right? They are bringing back Dallas Turner. They are bringing back Kool-Aid at corner. So it's not like they're bringing back nobody. Alabama's always going to have some guys. But yeah, let's kind of talk about this.
Well, when you look at their schedule, and just to kind of go off on a tangent here. So I know a lot of you guys in the comment section were saying before. Hold on 1 second, y'all. Let me take this off. We're kind of saying it before how we didn't know that Michigan was actually penciled in to play UCLA, but it got canceled. Now I will say this: at the end of the day, they were supposed to play them, but it got canceled. So their schedule is what their schedule is. So let's not make it seem like, well, they were supposed to play them. That's fine. I was supposed to be 6'5", but I'm not 6'5". I'm 5'10". So let's be completely transparent here. That's who they're playing, and that's who they're penciled in to play. So they have Middle Tennessee State, and Alabama has Texas and USF. That out-of-conference schedule is still poor, but they're still playing a respectable team in Texas.
Yeah, I will say, because, again, you got to remember, a lot of these out-of-conference games, the home and home specifically, you're making years out. So at the time that this was made, and I don't know when this game was penciled in, Texas may have been better than they've been the last couple of years. Although I do think, I think Texas is on an upswing.
Yeah, to me, this is going to be one of the better games in the first 2 weeks. I know you got LSU and Florida State in week 1, but I think this game a lot of people have circled because you're going to be able to test both Texas and Alabama. So if it's a lopsided game for either team, that's going to show a lot. But if it's a close game like last year's game, now obviously I think Texas should have won last year. Obviously, Edwards got hurt. But I mean, I think that game was really good. So I'm hoping this game is good as well. I think the only swing games for them this year are going to be Texas, A&M, Tennessee, and LSU. I think they dominate every other game on the schedule. But it's gonna come down to quarterback play at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think Alabama fans are not going to like this. And like I said, I think Alabama's going to be down. I have Alabama going 9-3. I have them losing to Texas, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. I think they'll beat LSU just out of revenge. But yeah, I have them 9-3, and I think this is going to be a down year for Alabama.
So my final prediction for them, I probably have them going 11-1. I think they lose a game. Now, I think they're going to lose to LSU or they're going to lose to A&M. Oh, I'm sorry, Tennessee. LSU or Tennessee. I think they beat Texas. I think they beat A&M. But again, those are all swing games to me. I wouldn't be surprised if they were undefeated, like I said, because Nick Saban is Nick Saban.
And I agree.
I would say this. I would be very surprised if they're 9-3. Like that would be crazy to me for them to lose 3 games. When was last time they lost 3 games in the regular season?
They lost 2 last year. So
it's had to have been over like 12
No.
years.
I mean, I'm sure it's been a while. It's probably the early days of Nick Saban. But again, I think they're down. And yeah, Nick Saban has done this before, but I also don't think he's lost to this level. And again, when you talk about year after year, but we'll see.
So, I mean, my pick is probably, I think they'll win the SEC this year. That's gonna be my take. Yeah, I got Alabama win the SEC this year. I think they'll go 11-1, still win their side of the division, and then beat Georgia or Tennessee.
Yeah, we've done Georgia. I'll hold my SEC winner out for a later video.